Episode 5. We're here. Well, that's 10. We're
Yes,
here.
sir.
Thank you all for being here. I have an absolute just rock star of a guest today. If you don't know him, his name is Victor Ceballos Sanchez. I probably am going to ruin that, so I will let you do that and introduce yourself here in a minute. But thank you so much for being here, dude. I thought it was really important that you come on the show and that you were one of our early guests in Alpine Unscripted because your story is awesome. It really is. It is truly a really cool story about how you got into wholesale, how you started as a teacher, how you moved from the Dominican Republic. Just ultimately the journey that you've had. I thought it was something really important that we should talk about today. So thank you so much for being here.
Hey, thank you for having me, man. I can't be more excited, man. It's a pleasure being here and sharing this day with you. So
Is this
yeah,
your first time ever getting on a podcast, hopping on a podcast, doing anything like this?
yeah. That's it's never actually been never been on a podcast before. First ever time, and pretty exciting overall. Yeah.
That's awesome. So first of all, I'm grateful that I'm the first opportunity to do it. You're a big part of this organization, right? You're the guy that hypes us up on our Monday morning meetings about hitting the goals and closing the pie. And we're going to have you do that signature statement here in the middle. You're obviously the team lead on the dispositions department. You manage pretty much, I think we closed 75 transactions this quarter. So you're managing that type of bandwidth just with another dispo. Obviously, Charles helping you guys out as well. It's a big team effort, but it's a lot that falls on 3 people. So just a huge rock star in the organization. So important with dispositions. We're going to talk about that. But first, where I want to start is kind of tell us where it all began, where you're from, how you found your way to Alpine. Like, just kind of start from the beginning.
Oh man, that is kind of like a long journey, right? I
Well,
always
that's over
knew I
here. We
would
got
love
time,
for
bro. We got
yes,
time.
sir, yes, sir. No, I appreciate that. Well, here's the thing, right? As you mentioned, I moved to the U.S. when I was younger. I was about 13 years old. Moved to Miami with both parents, both of my siblings as well, and I'm the youngest of 3. And yeah, at the time, I didn't really know much. I was a young guy just trying to learn the ropes. Trying to learn English first of all, and speak the language, and that was probably one of the biggest things. But found my way through, school and made it to college. At the time, I, thought I was gonna go to med school. It's kind of what your parents feed you. Oh, you got to be an engineer, you got to be a doctor, you got to be this,
Lawyer,
that.
yeah.
Yeah. So that was that. I found myself essentially in that path, right? And I did pre med. I became a biochemist. Once I graduated, I didn't really know what I wanted to do at that point in time because I was like, hey, you know what? Like, I don't think med school is for me. So I didn't really go that route. Had a lot of friends go that route. And I actually ended up teaching. I was like, how did I find my way into teaching? I don't know. Well, my roommate, he's actually a big educator over in Pennsylvania, and he was the one that kind of inspired me into like, hey, you don't know what to do now. You know chemistry, you know biology, you know all these sciences, and there's a lot of underserved communities that might benefit from you being out there. And I use that as sort of like also a platform to get back down to Miami. So I applied to Teach for America. You've probably heard about it.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So became a Teach for America teacher, and yeah, ended up teaching down here in Miami for about 3 years. I was doing chemistry. I was doing some environmental science for high school students. And yeah, I at the time I didn't really know like that was something I would carry on for the longest, but I always knew I liked real estate. So ended up getting my license at some point, and somehow ended up
And the
here.
rest is history. And
Yeah.
we're here. We'll talk about that journey. So you moved to the U.S. when you were 13. So you grew up in the DR. You spent most of your formative years as a kid there. What was it always your parents' goal and journey to move from the DR and take you guys to the US? Did you guys grow up there and end up moving for any specific reason? What really started that initial move to the States?
Well, it was actually my grandpa who lives here. He moved back in the 90s to the US, and I always knew since I can remember, I think I was 1 year old, 1 year old at the time, he submitted papers, right? But my mom was an adult, and typically that process takes a long time. So it took about 11 years and some change for all of our papers to, come through because it was both my parents and 3 kids, right? So we got all the papers together at the same time. At the time, I was like 12, 13, as I mentioned. As long as I can remember, they always told us like, "Hey, at some point you're gonna move to the U.S. We don't know when." And the whole time growing up, I was kind of like expecting it. And one day it
Mhm.
just hit us like, "Hey, you're leaving next year." I was like, "Whoa!" Like, this is happening.
That must have been a lot to take in as a kid. 13 years old, not necessarily you said you didn't speak English at the time, right?
Mm-mm,
So
mm-mm.
only speaking Spanish, coming to the US. Miami's a good place to land for that, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, Miami, I growing up in South Florida, I learned how to speak a little Spanish just living down there. But that must have been a real big impact and a real big kind of like culture shift, especially doing it so quickly. You always knew I wanted to go there, but you land. What was that like those first couple years when coming into the States? Was it a little bit of culture shock or was it exactly what you thought?
Hmm. I would say is a little bit of both because they kind of build that expectation into you of like, hey, you have to learn English, bro. Because once you get over there, it's just gonna hit you. You're not gonna have any idea what's going on, and that was kind of the case, right? I walked into right at the end of eighth grade, I think it was, and all the kids around me they spoke English. I went to a school that was predominantly, African American and Haitian, which there weren't a lot of kids that actually spoke Spanish there, but I did end up in a place like Hialeah. Like a lot of you go to high school in Hialeah or like a middle school
Mhm,
there, a lot of the teachers and students they speak Spanish, right? So that
mhm.
wasn't the case for me, which I think, to be honest, right, good and bad, I think it forced me to kind of go into the survival mode. Like I have to do this, I have to learn the language, and probably within like 6 to 8 months, I was already holding conversations and. It kind of became second nature after that. I just kind of learned it slowly, but yeah.
So where did you land in Miami when you first came here? Which neighborhood?
I was in the North Miami area, right around the
Okay,
North Miami area. Yeah, I went to Thomas Jefferson Middle School, then I went to North Miami Senior High School after the
gotcha.
fact.
Okay, so your family kind of stayed in that same area of Miami for a little good amount of time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Until I went out to college, they're still living around the same area. But yeah,
Oh, they are awesome. Yeah,
mm,
that was actually going to be my next question. So when your parents moved here, you said you were the youngest. You have two older brothers.
yeah, correct, correct.
Growing up being the youngest, I'm 4 out of 5, but I'm the oldest for my oldest brother. I have 3 older sisters. There's a lot of competition, right? There's a lot of we gotta kinda fight to prove our way. We gotta make sure that we're always kinda holding it down from the bottom, so to speak. What was that like for you having 2 older brothers, seeing their example growing up and then going, "Hey, trying to figure out what I wanna do." Did they have influence on you, or was it always like, "No, I wanna go my own path, and my parents are telling me to be a doctor, but I don't know if I love it."
I think for we've kind of all taken very different paths in lives, to be honest. And it's never
Okay.
been one of those things where, I'm like, oh, I want to do what my brother does, or, it's never been that way. I think we've always been supportive of everything we've wanted to do. I will say out of the three, I'm probably the one that's like I don't want to say crazier, but people look at me like, "Oh, why are you doing this? Why are you?"
Mhm.
And I've made some choices that at the time might have seemed a little crazy to a lot of people, but then I've kind of proven to myself and to them that it's probably the best thing to do. But yeah, I look up to my brothers nonetheless. I mean, they set the way for me. They've always been hardworking individuals, and my brother at the time when he got here, he was like 18. My oldest brother, he was like 18, 19, and just kind of seeing him transition from there to here. He was in college over there, didn't get to finish. He tried to start it here, but it was one of those things that, and it's a reality for a lot of people. Once you get to this country, a lot of people kind of go into this like work mode of like, well, I have to survive and make it. So that was the case for him. But same for my other brother. But we both kind of went through the school system, and now we're all, like I said, doing very different things. But yeah.
What do your brothers do?
One of them is a CBP officer. He used to work border patrol in Texas, then moved to Canada for a while to work over at the airport, over there. But he works for the U.S. government, and he lives in Texas again now, and kind of doing the same thing at the airport over there. And my other brother, he works at an airplane. It's an airplane company, and he kind of essentially inspects like parts for the planes and things like that.
Yeah.
And very yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a pretty cool job for sure.
That's awesome. So literally 3 different careers. You got a little bit of law enforcement, you got a little bit of sounds like engineering and mechanics, and then you
Mm.
went to go into the pre-med, the science world. We're gonna talk about the teacher journey here in a minute, and then ultimately finding yourself in real estate. So yeah, kinda covering the spectrum, right? There's
Yes.
nothing there that's like, "Oh yeah, we all kinda live in the same world." So coming up, going to school, your parents wanted you to be a doctor. Did you originally wanna be a doctor? Was that something that you thought you wanted to do?
I'll be honest, and you know this about me. I love animals. I actually wanted to be a vet.
That's
A
awesome.
lot of yeah, the a lot of things influenced me into not being a vet. I think, some people around me, and won't get into too many details, but I've kind of got influenced out of it. And at the time, I was like, well, maybe the next best thing is to be a doctor. And I always loved science. That was kind of something that came natural to me. I think maybe it was because it wasn't like something that at the time really required like a language thing, right? Because it came easy, like, images and things and signs and formulas and math, right? So all that stuff was a lot easier than like English and all these other, classes for me. And I kind of just, transitioned into it. And I was like, well, maybe this is what's for me, right? Vet, doctor kind of aligns. Let me just go the science route. And, I just didn't think much of it.
When did you realize, yeah, this ain't gonna happen. This doctor route is not gonna be for me. I was similar, right? I wanted to go into law enforcement. I wanted to join military. I go to sign up for the military. My ears are, I'm told, are bad, right? You got hearing loss from working in nightclubs. Oh shit, I have to choose a completely different career. I had nowhere to go. I remember distinctly, it was like, what the hell am I gonna do next? Like, did you have a moment like that?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I went into this deep spot. This was my third year of college, junior year.
Okay.
Towards the beginning. Obviously, classes change a lot, right? As you transition into, junior and senior year, now you're working with like this high level theses
Hmm.
and all this. And it's not like, I'm not necessarily saying these classes were harder, but they weren't really enjoyable for me. I was
Hmm.
like, well, I might really see myself now doing this for the next 4 years plus another 3 or 4, residency. And I was like, there's got to be another path because at the end of the day, I've always thought of the idea of being a doctor as like, oh, you're going to make a lot of money, and that's one of the things that I think maybe drives a lot of people down that path.
Hmm.
On top of like the love that they might have for it, but I don't think I loved it enough to kind of subject myself to that. So went into the spiral mode, didn't know what to do, kind of like you said, and it was like, oh, like depression kicked in, and I'm like, what am I going to do for these next 2 years? I have all these classes. I've committed like 2.5 years prior to this to all these classes, and I was like, I might as well finish, and I just got the degree because I was halfway done through it.
It's all about getting that piece of paper, you know? That's what it makes the difference, is just that proving you can finish it. I know when I was getting through college, it was like, okay, I have a degree in criminology and another one in hospitality business management. Here I am in real estate, hosting a podcast with no relation to either of them.
Yeah.
But, it taught me a lot. It taught me like, hey, you can finish something when life kind of throws some things at you sideways, that you can turn and you can pivot. And the ability to do that kind of starts that first foundational, platform for confidence. So you said, this isn't for me. You said a roommate at the time suggested go do Teach for America. What was that journey like? I see the commercials, right? Those are the ones with the red jackets
Oh, yeah.
on all the commercials. Yeah.
Oh,
Did you have a
yeah,
red
yeah.
jacket?
No, I didn't have a red jacket because I think at the time those because I think they kind of combined. It was like a program called
Hmm.
like City Year, and they had this like jackets
Yep.
and stuff. And I think they like changed their name, but like Teach for America then kind of like joined them. But yeah,
Gotcha.
it was man, it was it was, I don't know, like I didn't know what I was doing at the time either.
Hmm.
Like I just kind of applied out of the fear of not having a job. I think that was part of it too. I was like, well, I'm about to graduate, and this started happening like that last semester of senior year. And I saw he was doing it. I saw some other people around us doing it, and they were all about education, sociology, all this stuff from the beginning. So I knew they loved the stuff. And it kind of influenced me into it. Like, hey, Vic, they'll help pay for your loans. They'll give you a little incentive. I was like, you know what? Let me do it. I have student loans. Why not? So
Yeah.
yeah.
When you first started, talk a little bit about what that was like. Did you get to work locally? Were you here in Miami doing Teach for America? Did you have to travel to a new city? What was that like? And then what were you teaching? Were you teaching science?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yes, sir. So at the time, I think part of it too was the fact that they kind of let you pick different cities that you might want to move into. So they'll give you some
Hmm.
options. And, South Florida, the Miami area, there's a lot of underserved communities that, could use teachers like us, young people, minorities especially that, can, I guess, be role models and set that example for a lot of the kids, in these communities. And I also use that as leverage of potentially being able to move down back to Miami and kind of transition that way. I taught at the school, Miami Edison Senior High School. Yeah, it's over in the Brownsville area, and yeah, it was. was a weird journey because I was 20 years old at the time when I graduated college and transitioned into teaching. So you could imagine I'm teaching 11th and 12th graders, and they're
Yeah,
almost my age.
they're a couple years younger than you, right? So you're
Yeah.
like, we do the same thing on the weekends. I have friends that are your age.
Oh man.
How was it balancing that? Because you have
Mm,
to grow up quickly to be a
yeah.
teacher at 20 years old to
Mhm.
17 and 18-year-olds.
Yeah.
At a place in like Edison, there are going to be kids of all different backgrounds, and there are going to be kids of like all different behavioral levels, right? You're going to have kids that are really well behaved. You're going to have kids that like to push back. I know that I was the type in high school, like, you like to have fun. You like to push back. You like to be a little bit, it's the rebellious stage, right?
Yeah.
How was that balancing your own kind of like, hey, I'm trying to figure my own journey out, but I'm
Yeah.
also trying to give advice to these kids? That
Mhm.
must have been really tricky. What was that like?
Oh man, like you said, it was tricky. There was a lot of maturing, and it happened very quickly, right? You get hit with it, as soon as you walk in there. Everybody, I think, because as students, we want teachers to be cool, and we want teachers
Yep.
to, So you walk in there, you're like, I'm gonna be the cool teacher. I'm gonna be that guy that everybody loves, and you quickly realize it's not the case. And you'll find some kids that love you right away and you connect with them really well, and some others that you really have to work through. And everybody's kind of going through their own thing. And um, just trying to be, wear different hats for every single individual. And you learn it over time, but it happens very quickly. And I couldn't be the teacher, I guess, that I envisioned myself I was going to be, but I honestly ended up being a better version of that. And
What did you envision you were going to be at first?
no, I was just gonna be that guy that, everybody like, "Oh, like, I
Like the
wanna hang
cool
out in
teacher?
Mr."
Yo, what up,
Yeah.
Vic?
I wanna hang out in Mr. C's classroom, we have handshakes, we do this and that, like, like, obviously,
Hmm.
there was a lot of that of, like, kids trying to come over at the end of the year, people, like, will bring the PlayStation and play in my
Hmm.
classroom and stuff. Like, I was that teacher to an extent, but also you realize you also have to set those boundaries, with a lot of kids for, a lot of things they try to get away with. And, at the end of the day, you are a mentor, you are a role model, you have to push them in the right direction. And, you can't be permissive of a lot of the things they try to get away with. And they see that you're young, they think that you're going to be permissive of those things. That is something I had to kind of realize very quickly and pivot.
Yeah.
So,
I imagine, yeah, it's like, hey, I'm sure there's a lot of things like you don't want to feel like a hypocrite. I feel like that sometimes as a parent too, like you're just telling your kids like, don't go do these things. Like, well, I did those things, right? And I'm sure when you're 20 teaching high schoolers, it's the same type of thing. You're looking at them saying, I did some of the same stupid mistakes that maybe they're making in the process. And it's how do I pass that along to them? How do I pass that learning lesson to them vicariously? It does take a lot of maturity. Anything that sticks out from that first couple years of teaching, you're like, man, this is when it really clicked for me as far as like, this is what I know I either don't want to do, or this was a really cool learning moment for me, or something you took with you after that journey?
I think the biggest thing, and once I realized I wasn't going to be a teacher forever, he, and it was one of those things like where can you go from teaching? You either kind of climb up the ladder of like admin, and now you're maybe a head coach for a department and things like that, right? And I didn't really see myself doing that. I I kind of wanted to be an inspiration to kids who wanted to break from that mold of society of like, hey, you could do whatever the heck you want in this life, brother. Like that was kind of the thing I try to almost, not like preach every single day. Like I wasn't standing there like, oh, do this and that, but it was almost like I want you guys to do what you love. Don't listen to, anybody about the things that you like and where you want to go in life, and take the risk and do it because, you know, this is not guaranteed. This is finite, right? Like we're only here for a very short period of time, and you don't want to look back and regret, all the choices you made because of XYZ or any societal pressures or whatever it might be. And I think that was probably one of the biggest things, and that helped me connect with a lot of kids that maybe felt out of place, maybe didn't necessarily know what to do. And that kid that wanted to be, a YouTuber. I'm like, bro, I'm giving you advice on how to be a YouTuber. I have no idea how to do it, but I think the biggest thing is commitment and taking the risk and doing it, and just going full in. And it wasn't, I wasn't that guy that was going to tell you, hey, go to college and do this and that. You want to go to college? I'm going to help you find those applications. I'm going to help you find, the scholarships that you could get and all this stuff. And whatever you need, I'll meet you there. That was kind of the thing for me. And um, I think that's probably the biggest thing about teaching that I love, that you get to see so many people from so many different walks of life and so many likes and dislikes, and
Mhm.
it teaches you a lot about life, and it really puts it in perspective. So
That to me, I think is such an important lesson for so many people to kind of realize is because, millennials and even Gen Zs to a certain extent, we were sold that. I don't call it a lie because I think there's a lot of great foundations to it. But we were sold this: go to college, get a college degree, you'll get a traditional job. It'll set you up for that safety and security. And then we were kind of the first founders of the internet age, influencing being a career, YouTubing being a career. Now we're seeing it similarly with AI starting to become this new up and coming industry. The traditional plan that might have worked for generations before us, it wasn't the roadmap any. So for a lot of us, it's very similar to your story. I felt the same way. It was like, I'm giving advice as a 21, 22, 23-year-old to people who are 17, 18. And it's like, dude, I don't know either. Right. I'm trying to figure it out. Like, we're going to figure this out together. But I
Clearly.
love that journey from the element of like, once you figure it out, it's like, wow, you really garner the confidence to do something new. So
Mhm.
it's like you were learning, hey, I don't really necessarily want to be a teacher, and I'm encouraging at the same time all these kids to go follow their passion. Was that kind of a light bulb moment for you of like, I have to kind of practice a little bit of what I preach here?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Because they always thought I was gonna be the teacher. Like, kids come in freshman year, they meet me and they expect, oh, mister, you're gonna be in my graduation and this and that. I'm like, I'm trying to be gone by the time you're in 12th grade, but I don't know where I'm
I'll
gonna
come
be.
to visit. I won't be on stage with you.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. Exactly.
so you were in the middle of a school year when you were like, this ain't for me.
Yeah, it was probably my second year in. I actually ended up, funny enough, and I think this might help transition into like how I got into real estate, because it was almost like, my first year. I've always liked real estate. I used to be a kid watching HGTV. As soon as I got cable here, I was like, oh, this is amazing. People are like flipping houses and doing this, and I loved all that stuff. So I always knew I had a little vein for that kind of thing. When I was in high school, I'm like, well, I might be able to be a realtor on the side and try to, maybe help people rent houses or sell houses. Actually, my head coach, the bio department, the science department, he actually had his license, and he would help, friends and family like list one or two homes a year. He'll get referrals and stuff. So I was like, oh, you're doing this on the side, and he's like, yeah, it's pretty good money. Amazing guy. He moved to Africa with his family, rented out his properties here. It was amazing journey. And this guy inspired me to, maybe I could just get my license and do this on the side, which I did, but quickly you realize it's kind of like a full-time thing too if you really want to make it a career. And with teaching, you quickly also realize that it's not just, the hours that you're at the school, but once you leave the school, now you're grading papers, coming up with lesson plans, readjusting things, coming up with, quizzes and all this other stuff that was taking a lot of time outside of just work, where I'm like, I'm not really building anything, within school or outside of school. And funny enough, I ended up getting two teaching jobs. So I kind of put the real estate stuff on the side. Yeah. So I used to work from, 7 to 2:20 at a public school at Edison. And then I got a private job at a school teaching algebra. I was teaching math now for like 2 years. It was down in Miami Beach at this, it was like a Jewish old boys high school, and, great kids. And that taught me a whole different set of lessons. But it was one of the times that I also realized I learned a lot from those kids too, because their parents used to be like business owners and stuff like that. They're going to this private school. They used to tell me about their parents too, and I'm like, man, like I want to be a business owner. I want to do something maybe more independent. I've always, like I said, I love money. I was like, I need to figure something out, because I can't be going from 7 to 7 working at two high schools, and then I get home and now I'm grading papers till 11, 12 at night just to wake up and do the same thing over and over again. So
So the exposure to kind of both worlds kind of really helped you, solidify like, okay, this has a lot of positive impact. I'm enjoying a lot of the things that I might be doing. But for me personally, I have bigger aspirations. I have bigger growth. I have bigger goals.
yeah.
What was it like saying, all right, I'm done. I'm going to go into real estate? For those of you who are listening and don't know anything about real estate, it is a roll of the dice industry. You are going into a commission only. You are betting on yourself. the confidence and the insecurity that comes along with it, especially in the beginning, that's a huge journey. What was that like, really? So saying, "Hey, I'm done. I'm going to roll the dice on real estate." Like, where did you go? Did you go into traditional at first, or where did you go with that?
Oh man, I always think about this because I was still teaching when I did my first ever transaction. It was actually my cousin. I helped them buy a condo in Miami Beach, and
Hmm.
it's it's such a weird journey because at the time I didn't know anything. I didn't even know how to submit an offer. I didn't know how to. I remember explicitly I called the listing agent for that particular condo and I had typed up like this document on Google Doc that was my offer. It's funny, like between you and I, you
I
know
will
exactly
pay
what.
you this much money.
Bro, I kid you not. I will look back and I'll send it to you after the fact. But bro, I wrote this whole life story like this is the best buyer for your property, this and that. More like a letter of intent rather than like an actual offer. I didn't know you had to type up a contract and send it and all this stuff. So I call these people. I'm like, hey, where do I send this offer? And they're like, what do you mean? Like to send the contract, this, that. I'm like, what contract? I have this thing typed out. And I felt so embarrassed because they kind of gave me the breakdown of what it was. First experience ever doing something like this, but I at that moment I could have shriveled up and just been like, "Hey, this is not for me. Like, I don't know what the heck I'm doing." Or, kind of like what I did, pivot. I went and watched a bunch of YouTube videos, taught myself how to, write up a contract and submit a proper offer. And, it didn't get accepted at the time. Then, we ended up actually submitting on another condo, and that one actually worked out. And I actually still have somewhere here. Oh, here's a lockbox that this guy gifted me. Sorry about that. First ever deal, the lockbox from that condo, and I kept it. And I don't remember the code. I got to look back at it, but I'm gonna carry this for the rest of my life. But it's one of those things where it's like, like you said, it's a roll of dice. You don't really know what you're doing, but at that point in time, I knew there was something there and I kept pursuing it. I kept pursuing it. Didn't really work out in the traditional, and I was, dropping off pamphlets at people's doors. I still got a bunch that I printed out, like, spent like $500 printing out all these things and trying to market myself, but didn't really get too far in there because, like I said, it's a 24/7 commitment. Putting yourself out there, and with
Really
the
is.
teaching stuff, it wasn't aligning. So I had to make a hard choice, and had to go in or just give up.
Well, I think that's sometimes for a lot of folk, that is really, that's the toughest part is like feeling like, hey, I want to try to dip my toe in the pool a little bit, see if it works,
Mm.
seeing if I like the temperature of the water, seeing if I can swim a little
Yeah.
bit. With a game like real estate, it's like, nope. That's really not an option because your first few experiences, I know that I had that too. I started out at a rent one, sale one in traditional, working a desk and literally taking people to $400 or $500 a month rentals in like Lake Worth and Boynton and some rougher neighborhoods. And I was like, this is the real estate dream that I went after. I still loved it. I just knew that there
Hmm.
was something new. But there's so much value in just starting, even if you don't know.
Yeah.
So many people are like, let me wait to figure it out. Let me wait to get trained. Let me wait to get this education. Let me wait to do this. Let me wait to do that. No, just go start. Figure it out. Type up a Google Doc and try to send an offer. But what that did is it got somebody to teach you. I was like, okay, cool. I
Yeah.
learned. Right.
Yeah.
And I was just talking about that with somebody the other day. The importance of if I come in with information or if I don't come into a room. So somebody may give me information if I enter that room. If I don't know it, I have to look at that information positively, no matter how it's delivered to me, right? They might be saying, "Hey Shane, you messed up. Hey Shane, you did this wrong. Hey, you suck, whatever that person might be saying." But it's like, well, thank you in a way, because that was new information I didn't have when I walked into this room. And when you get into real estate, that part of the journey is so important. It's like I'm just trying to learn everything that I possibly can. So you said cousin's condo.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, yeah,
So
and he moved his parents into there. It's great.
does he still own it?
Yeah, he still owns it. It's more of a
That's
rental
awesome.
now. Now they're living somewhere else, but yeah.
That's the investment journey, right? The first place becomes the rental and you start to stack those homes. So you're in traditional. How long did you do traditional before you were like, let me check out this wholesale thing? And how did you even find wholesale?
Oh, great question. Because how I think a lot of people get into wholesaling through
Mhm.
gurus, right? Like you see
Yep.
people on social media and they're like,
Click
well, like you
below
could
for the
flip.
link. We do not have a link. Just to let
Yeah, we
everybody know, I
don't
am not
we
selling a
don't look.
course.
Yeah, no, I think I came across this company first. It was called Keegley, and with this guy Damji, he's super famous, and he I watched his page, all the stuff that we're doing. Then I came across Steve Trang, the sales trainer. He has his
Mhm.
company, Ryan Pineda. So I started following all these guys that are like, big time on social media, and started learning about this journey of like wholesaling, where it's like, hey, these people are making a lot of money, and not necessarily closing with their money and all this stuff. And it's like, how do we, how do I do something like this? How do I get into something like this? And I didn't really know, I didn't really know where to start. Watched a lot of, kind of like the information analysis paralysis type of thing, where I was just consuming a ton of information, watching all these podcasts and doing all this stuff, but never really took any action and couldn't figure out how to do something like this on my own. So I figure, I'm like, well, these people have companies and they have teams, and they built something from the ground up where I can maybe go in there and learn it that way. Um, at the time, I remember I submitted a few applications, one of which was to Property Force, and I remember I'd applied as an acquisitions agent, and they essentially accepted me, but as kind of like a cold
With
caller
the
at the time.
dispo. Yep.
Well, yeah. Oh, here's the thing. Funny enough, I don't know. Maybe you didn't know this part, but I knew you were over there at the time, and it was like I applied, I got accepted, but they called me and they're like, "Well, it's not for an acquisitions role. It's actually for a cold caller." And this was back in like
Oh, yeah, that's right.
2020.
We were running that back then. I forgot about
Yeah,
that.
yeah. So they were doing the cold calling, and they're like, "We need cold callers. You could go in here, and you'll get paid this much if your lead ends up being a contract that converts and closes." And I'm like, "Do I really want to leave?" And at the time, I was, for a young kid, 21-year old, I was back in 2021, and it, I was making probably like 6 grand or something. Imagine like between the teaching jobs and stuff, and it was just like, do I would really want to give this up for a maybe, like you said, roll the dice where I'll make, this much for a lead that might convert. So I shut it down. I turned it down and I was like, no, I stayed with teaching for another like year and a half. And funny enough, within a couple months, I applied again to Property Force again for the acquisitions role again. And I got shut down. That time around, they didn't give
You
me.
rejected us once. We're you shut the door the second
You
time.
rejected me, I'm gonna reject you now. So they told me no, and I remember Brian, I stayed in touch with him and I kept telling him, hey, this is something I really want to do. This is something I really want to learn. Um, and I remember it was summer of 2023, and I was in the Dominican Republic. I love going back there all the time. And I remember Brian called me. And he was like, "Hey Vic, I know you applied twice in the past. I know you've been hounding me down for this, and that says a lot about you." And he was like, "I don't have an acquisitions role, and we don't do the cold calling anymore, but we have a dispo position open." And I was like, "What is that?" It's like, "Oh, it's a guy that sells the deals. We get the deals. We got to sell the deals." And I was like, tell me about it. We met about it formally after the fact, kind of like an informal interview, and it sounded appealing. I mean, at the time, I was desperate to get into wholesaling, so I was like, you know what, give it to me. I'll go in there, I'll work my way into whatever I need to work my way into. Um, yeah, first dispo role, baby.
So dispo compared to acquisitions, two completely different sides of the brain. But in my opinion, and if acquisition agents, if you're listening to this, don't get mad at me. It's almost the most important place to start. A lot of people think like, just go get the deal, get the deal, get the deal, get the deal. We'll figure out how to sell it later.
Yeah.
And some of the early people that taught me the business, some of the mentors that I kind of grew up under, and then some of the training that we got in the early years of Property Force when I started out there as an agent was like the dispositions part more important because once you can identify the demand, it makes it so much easier to target who it is you're going after, what it is you're going to look to try to go get and accomplish. So it is a very important part of that journey. When you came on board to dispositions, was it what you expected?
Yes and no. I figure to an extent, right? Like I always wanted to go into let me lock these contracts up and talk to sellers and do this and that. And most of our training, actually, I remember training up to going into the role. We actually did it as a cohort, because they
Hmm.
had like classes coming in, and we were all trained as acquisitions, even though we were on the dispo side. I remember I was in that class with two other dispos that were coming in with me as well, and there was like like 10 plus acquisitions that were coming in. So all the training that we did, I was actually calling sellers and working old leads and stuff like that. So I never really trained on this bill. So when I got in, it was completely different from the training I had done. And it was just like, well, what do I do? Right. So it was kind of like training myself as I was doing the job type of thing. So, um, yeah.
The importance of learning while doing. You gotta
Mm,
you gotta jump in the pool in the deep end.
yeah.
So did dispositions. You and I obviously know, Property Force went through its struggles, went through some restructuring, had to change. You are now like, shit, the company I worked for, I just jumped into this industry. I know I went through the same thing. It's gone, right? And for lack of a better words, it's not the same company anymore. It's not the same career opportunity. Did you go through a moment of like, do I stay in this and find something new? Do I go back to teaching? What was that like when that first happened?
You know what's crazy, man? You know what's crazy? I remember because I was what like a year into Property Force when all this was happening. I remember I got that call that morning. I didn't go to work that Monday morning when this all happened, and I got a call from one of my buddies. He was like, "Well, I think I don't. None of us have a job anymore." I was like, "Hold on, what do you mean?
We were all
What do-"
unemployed very quickly.
I was like, "What do you mean we don't have a job?" I was like, "Yeah, like I remember at the time. I mean, my story where my wife was actually coming from the Dominican Republic, and
Hmm.
her,
Hmm.
she had gotten her papers, and her flight was bought, and I was jobless, and she was coming in next month. So this happened January. Her flight was for February. I was shopping for apartments. I got denied in a bunch of places. And now that I look back at it, I'm like, maybe it was a sign from God that He knew this was going to happen. So if I
Hmm.
committed to a lease, now I'm jobless. How am I going to pay for rent? So
Yeah, yeah.
at the time, I was like, what do I do? We actually moved in with my parents when she came in for a little bit as I was trying to figure things out. But at the time, a buddy of mine, he has an electrician. He's an electrician. He has an electric company. I was doing some jobs with him on the side during the week, and I was doing moving jobs, and I was doing some landscaping with another buddy of mine. So I was doing anything I could find to make some cash while, trying to figure out what to do next. And that went on for probably like 2 months or so. I remember I reached out back out to the principal at the school I used to teach at, and to the head of the department, for science. And I told them, I had like, I know I left, but I still got my certificate for like another year and a half where I could teach. I don't have a job. I would love to go back. If you guys need another science teacher, I'll teach whatever. Right. I literally told them like this. And within a week, I was at their office just kind of talking through this whole thing. And, they had me reapply. I was in the docket. I mean, I had other science schools, reaching because I had to submit a formal application through like the school system and had other schools like reaching out to me as well. But the opportunity was, I knew I was going back into teaching. I already made that in my head. Yeah. Yeah. So that was that, man. I applied. They were calling me like, "Hey, yeah, we're probably gonna get you started, like, at this date, this and that." Yeah, bunch of stuff happened after the fact that got me
So
here.
you're about to be a teacher. I know that, to a little spoiler alert for those listening, I know that Christy and Charles reached out to me and they were like, "Hey, we know the business just shut down. Who would you recommend?" You and I didn't work very directly with one another. I was obviously doing a little different things. You were in the dispositions. I kind of oversee like the chief of staff stuff. But I knew I was like, this guy's got talent. I was just like, absolutely. If I'm going to recommend anybody coming out of property force to be a dispositions agent, that's what Christy and Charles were looking for at the time. I was like, you got to hit up Vic. Like he had energy. You always had energy. You always brought that charisma. You always brought that ability to be super positive, no matter what was going on or what was being thrown at you. And you were producing results at a time that I knew, like we knew the business was rocky at the time, and he was still getting results. He was still doing like call him, do his thing. And at the time, Christy and Charles had no interest in hiring me. It was just, hey, we're all friends. Like, could you recommend anybody? And you came on board here.
Was that
Were you
that was
surprised to get that
crazy.
phone call out of nowhere, or
The way it happened, it was just so random. It was almost like it was meant to be. It was one of those things where, I remember especially I got this text, "Hey, it's so and so. I got your number from Shane." Christy hit me up and I I was like, "Oh, this is weird." And then I remember you and I connected and you kind of ran me through what had happened and I was like, "Okay, like, I'll definitely look into it." But I already had this other teaching opportunity. It was like
you were like, I'm just going to be
security.
a teacher?
I'm like, the security is right in front of me. Like this all happened. I went all in, gave up, whatever I had going on before. Young kid making good money, gave it all up, went into this company, and it all fell in my face. And I'm like, do I want to do that again? It was almost like that question, like, have this thing, I
Yeah,
could
it's
go
a
back
trauma.
and feel good. Feel, yeah, no, I'm like, I could go back to being comfortable. I could go back to this and, at least know that I'm going to be offering the security for me and my family. My wife looked at me and she was like, "Hey, have the conversation. What's the worst that could happen?" So got on the phone with Christy. We talked for probably like 40 plus minutes about like a bunch of different things, and then we kind of set up a formal interview, and I think we just kicked it off. It's just like such a great conversation, and once we got into like the actual formal interview, I remember walking in there in my mind with like kind of like some figures of like, well, like if I somehow can make this or sell this many houses and do this, kind of like a little different for what I was doing at Property Force because the structure was different. And I was like, if it's not this, if I'm kind of going back to something like that, I don't necessarily want to jump on board. And it was, like I said, it was almost like a sign from God. She literally said the same exact numbers and everything I had like written down and talked to my wife about. And it was just like, yeah, no, I this is it, right? Like that was my sign to just like let me just do it. And it's funny. I remember at the time there was like something that came up because they sent me like the contract and stuff for me to like come on board. And there was something about the contract that I didn't like. And Christy could probably tell you the story on the side, but I fought Charles and Christy on this thing. I'm like, no, you got to sign this other contract. And I went on ChatGPT. Hey, I was good at the time, and I drafted this whole thing. I'm like, no, we got to get this part right here because of XYZ. And I was like, what the hell am I doing? Like, they're trying to hire me, and I try to tell them I can't do this unless you sign this. And they actually did. I think that's when they realized, like, oh, this guy can negotiate.
Yeah, well, if this is how he negotiates his offer contract, we'll feel good about how he offers properties out. So that's a
Yeah.
big that's a big risk coming from the experiences that you came from. A lot of people would look at that and go, I tried this, didn't work. Let me go try something new. And I think that's it's really valuable. And it's valuable from the perspective of just because you try something once and fail, or try something twice and fail, or try something 3, 4, 5, 7, 10, 15 times and fail. If you have passion for it, if you feel like that's kind of the journey that you should be going on, trust your instincts, trust your gut, and don't give up. And so many people are like, I got to take the safety and security. And I get it. I was a safety and security guy for a really long time myself. In some ways, I still am. And especially now that I have wife and kids and all that other stuff, you have to feel like I'm comfortable. But that's the exact opposite feeling you want to fight against, right? And we've learned that time and time again is that when you start to feel comfortable, you start to feel complacent. That being comfortable kind of gets you to settle, and you're almost putting the glass ceiling above your head yourself. Nobody else is putting it above you. You're putting it there yourself. So you start out as dispositions. You come into Alpine. That was 2024, right? Early
Yeah.
2024, something like
Early
that.
2024. Yeah.
And then we've had two just rock star years. I know you're a big part of that success. What was it like initially coming in those first few months? Was it immediately like, oh, I made the right choice, or was it still like, this is wholesale still?
It's funny. I think there was a level of like, you know, because at the beginning, you kind of have to, kind of like with every role, whether it's acquisitions, dispo, not so much prove yourself, but they give you like these, hey, you're making calls, you're building relationships. I wasn't so much selling houses just yet. Kind of like in acquisitions, you maybe look at the bucket, look at old leads, and just kind of work your way through those and just kind of, practice and practice. But I think they realized very quickly that I already knew like the process of like, and I was calling these guys and I was chatting it up and spending all day just talking on the phone. I'm like, I could be selling these guys some deals.
You're like, I'd like
So
to sell some houses now, please.
so like I think it was like the second week towards end of the second week, they started passing me on some deals and started selling very quickly. I think by the end of that first month, I had sold, several properties already. And um it just picked up very quickly from there. And I realized I was like, oh, this is a lot different because at Property Force, I was probably maybe selling, because there was a lot of dispo agents and we worked different regions. I was probably selling maybe two, maybe two deals a week, one deal a week. here I was probably working on 5 houses in a single week, 5, 6 houses is all, very, very fast paced. Yeah.
And now I think between you and Dave, that you guys we're 30, 35 houses a month, give or
Yeah.
take, uh,
It's a low
on
month.
an
Yeah.
assignment pace. Hey, I'll shout out your numbers because I'm proud of it. You guys are doing crazy things. There's 2 disposition agents, and Charles obviously helps oversee dispo with you guys. But we're on pace right now for a 6.4 million in assigned revenue. You guys have assigned over 80 transactions so far this year. That that's crazy, right? And especially in Q1, which anybody who's in wholesale, Q1 is it's a toss up quarter. It's either going to be really good or you just got to dig yourself out of the hole in Q2, Q3. You guys are creating that assignment revenue off of 2 people, right? So like you said, we have 5, 6, 7 dispo where we came from before. You guys are doing it with 2 people. Do you feel sometimes like this is a lot, this is too much, or it's just like, no, I want more, I want more?
Man, it's I think I'm addicted to contracts, brother. It's one of those things,
You
like,
did.
you
You
can't
said before we got on, you're like, I'm about to do a podcast. I just got a contract. It's already 8:30 in the morning.
Oh,
Life is good.
it's signed. It just popped up. This guy signed it like 20 minutes ago. So it's like, yeah, I just sold another house. It's like it just becomes second nature to the point like you just want more. Like you said, you just want to
Mhm.
keep doing more. And obviously, and Charles has spoken about this on previous episodes, right? The more we do, and as we grow as a company, and as the dispo department grows, you realize there are bottlenecks and things that need to be fixed, and you hit a ceiling, and it's more of like, hey, what's broken, what can we fix, what can we change so we can push through this. And I think we're very, very great at doing that and finding the bottlenecks and the things where we need to pivot from. And I think that's what makes us unique. It's 2 guys plus our director, and it's like, and we're doing insane things. Like I would have never thought like 2 guys could do this much stuff, but we love it, man. Sometimes it's overwhelming, but I think that's part of it all. And you know,
Part of the growth. That's really
exactly.
part of the growth. If it's not hard, uh, it's probably not going to get me to the next level. It's probably not going to push me forward. And I know that that's something we all really embody. Has that been the biggest lesson for you kind of so far? Is that when I start to feel uncomfortable, I know I'm in the right spot? Or what's been the biggest lesson for you, I think, on your journey? Because it's a cool journey, right? You came from another country, had to learn the language, thought you were going to be one thing, then thought you were going to be another thing. Now you're in wholesale real estate, which you didn't even know existed until about 2, 3 years. Once you even got introduced to real estate, what's been that biggest lesson for you of like, this is what I always need to keep in the back of my mind to move?
Man, I I always look back at, like you said, at all the risks that I took, because it was a risk, right? I was walking away from whatever felt comfortable, and just kind of jumping in the deep end, and trying to tread my way through it. And um, you always realize that as overwhelming and as uncomfortable as it might feel in the moment, there's always another side of it, right? Like it's I love this quote that Charles always uses of like learning to dance in the rain, and it's like it's gonna stop at some point, and you just got to keep dancing through it, and just kind of keeping that positive mindset and knowing that even when things get tough, even when things get uncomfortable, even when you can't, figure out what's next, what's the next step, there's always something you could do. There's always some way, to push the deal forward, to push yourself forward, to get up from where you're at. And um, I just tell people, I tell people now, just do it, man. If it's in your heart and you want to do it, just do it. Doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter what it takes. As long as you stay in the game for long enough, it's going to work itself out. And that's kind of what happens with me. Sometimes I find myself working 5 deals at a single moment, right? And I'm working 5
Mhm.
deals. Some of them, tougher than others. And not every deal, it's a home run deal. But you gotta work it. You gotta work yourself through it, man. You got to figure out what to do, and there's always a way. There's always a way, and that's probably the biggest thing that I've learned. There's always a way through these things, and just kind of see myself on the other side of it. You kind of build that book of evidence of like, I've been in this spot before, I've felt this before, I've seen it, right, and I've gotten to the other side of it. What's different this time around? And you can just get comfortable in being uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's embracing those moments when you're in them. It's
Mhm.
to look back. It's hard. I
Mhm.
struggle with that sometimes myself too. It's like I'll feel stressed, I'll feel overwhelmed, I'll feel in over my head, and then it's like I felt this way before. But
Yeah.
it's hard to snap that in, and it's not like a light switch you can turn in and off. Sometimes you do spiral. you do kind of go down the wrong rabbit holes in your brain, and you have to recenter. I tell people just take one step, just one
Hmm.
step, and then another step, and then another step. It really will lead you to ultimately you'll be okay. You don't know what your version of okay is yet. When you get there, you'll understand what it is. But that is really kind of how that's really been a huge part of my life. Has that shaped a lot of your life as well too?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's I I think I've learned. It's almost like now I get excited about the difficulty and the difficult moments because it's almost like I like to look at it as like the story I'm gonna tell, my kids when I'm older and
I'm in the right spot. If it's hard, I'm in that right place.
exactly, and I love it. It fuels me. It drives me to do more. It drives me to push forward because I'm like, man, like I could do this. Like if no, I'm only here and I'm experiencing this because probably somebody else is not gonna walk this path. And I think that's what sets us apart. We love that difficulty. We love the challenge, and we
Mhm.
find a way. There's always a way,
There's
and
always a way.
they're not willing to walk this path. We are, and that's why we're where we're at.
Yeah, I mean that there's that cliche saying, right? If it was easy, everybody would do it. And it's the thing when I'm always in those moments, it's like, all right, well, this is hard, but let's keep going, let's keep going. And you've lived that at a couple different moments because it sounds like, at every turn you thought like, okay, this is where I was going. Oh no, detour, U turn. And those are such valuable lessons in life is understanding that sometimes the signs pointing you to detours are actually, whether you believe in faith or God, it's really it's God pointing you in a different direction, or it's the universe pointing you in a different direction. It's not a detour sign. It's actually a directional sign. And you have to trust it. You have to know that that road's going to be hard and then you're going to go through some dark woods and some forests and some tough roads and overcome that. The other side of that mountain's just absolutely awesome. Final takeaways before we wrap here. I absolutely love talking to you. What excites you about the future most? What are you really stoked about looking forward? You're in a new level of growth now. You just got promoted here. You took on a team lead position. You have a new responsibilities, a lot to balance there as well. We're starting some new verticals inside the organization with helping building out some other departments. So you're taking on more. This is one of those moments you're putting more on your back. What excites you about the future?
the I think just that, right? The opportunity for endless growth. There's
Hmm.
endless potential of what we could do here as a company, what we could do, as a team and within my personal life as well. There's all these levels that I feel like, you never really get to I've came to realize you never really get to you know the end of the road, right? There's no end of the road until this the end of the road, right? So it's like I get to this level now. It's like what's next, what's next. And I think realizing that life is really just about becoming better and better and better as you go, and not it's not a set of goals. I mean, I've accomplished probably most of the goals I've had 3, 4 years ago, and now I'm thinking about all the stuff that I haven't accomplished and that keeps me up at night that I need to get done and that I need to achieve. But we don't stop to realize that I've accomplished so much already of what I've wanted. So it's I think what excites me most is that idea of like endless growth opportunity and just seeing where this is going to take me. And I love the challenge. Like I said, I love to see where this opportunity will take me. So
So important to reflect on that. It's so important to reflect on, hey, when I've hit the goals I thought would set me up forever, I've hit those goals and now I have new goals. And finding yourself always searching for those things. That's absolutely awesome. And I'm excited for you. I'm excited for your journey. I know you've already accomplished great things, but I know you have a lot of things in the not the windshield, not the rear view. I was like, I don't know the words there for a second. The windshield, not the rear view, but just a huge journey in your rear view. I'm excited for what the windshield will look like for you. Um, and kind of that journey. And I'm happy to be on it with you. Very very blessed and very grateful to be here and to continue that working relationship and to have you as a guest today as well. It was one of the first things that I know Christy, Charles, and myself were like, who were one of the first people with like Vic. Love his story, love his energy. Can't wait to have you on. So I'm glad that you were able to join us today. Thank you so much.
thank you,
I
brother. Thank
appreciate
you.
that. I hope you had fun. For everybody listening, hope you enjoyed this episode. Peace out.
Peace out.